Pranam, Jai Janendra. Welcome to this last class on Bhagwan Parshvanath's Jivan Charitra that we have been um, learning about for several months now. We'll finish the final chapter today and we'll have some time for questions at the end. There is a very brief uh, introduction to a story that is described in Trisasti Shalaka Purush Charitra that is related to this Charitra. I will introduce the story. I will not actually complete it, uh, but I will start off with something interesting and maybe we can look at that at a future class sometime later whenever we decide on a future topic. So we'll start with the prayers as usual. नमो अर्यन्ताणं नमो सित्ताणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उच्चायाणं नमो लोये सब्बसाहुणम् एषो पञ्चनमुक्कारो सप्पपावपणासनो मङ्गलाणं च सप्पेसिं पठमं हवै मङ्गलम् नमो अरिहन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उज्जायाणं नमो लोये सब्बसाहुणम् एषो पञ्चनमुक्कारो सप्पपावपणासनो मङ्गलाणं च सप्पेसिं पठमं हवै मङ्गलम् नमो अरिहन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उज्जायाणं नमो लोये सब्बसाहुणम् एषो पञ्चनमुक्कारो सप्पपावपणासनो मङ्गलाणं च सप्पेसिं पठमं हवै मङ्गलम् वीर सर्वसुरा सुरेन्द्रमहितो वीरमुदा संस्कृता वीरेणाभियत स्वकर्मनिचयो वीराय नित्यं नमः वीरातीर्थमिदं प्रभुतमतुलं वीरशिखोरं तपो वीरे श्रीधृति कीर्तिकान्तिनिचय श्रीवीरभद्रं दिश कमठे धरणेन्द्र च शोषितं कर्म कुर्वति प्रभुस्तुल्यमनोवृत्ति पार्श्वनाथ श्रीयेस्तु वः अंगूठे अमृत वसे लपति तणा भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिये मनवांछित फलदातार. We learnt about Bhagwan Mahavir's life, Bhagwan Parshvanath's lives over several months now. In between, we've had other classes and other interruptions, but I'm hoping that all of you who have been attending regularly have retained some of the knowledge of the life story of Bhagwan Parshvanath, but more than that, the overall learning from this story that we hope to carry on with us and develop that into a deeper learning and deeper means of improving ourselves and our souls, improving our souls. I'll start sharing some slides. A lot of it is a recap, but I've shortened that. And then towards the end, we will talk about the important dates in Bhagwan Parshvanath's life and some important information about his tirth. Let me start sharing the slides with you all. So we are on week 22. We started off with the life of Bhagwan Parshvanath as Marubhuti, and we learned about his relationship with his brother Kamat and how that developed and ended up with a level of severe hatred on Kamat's side towards his brother Marubhuti that carried on over several lives, and most of the narrative about Bhagwan Parshvanath's life that we discussed was based on this relationship and how it unfolded in each life. And the biggest lesson that we learned was that forming enmity and hatred towards anybody and the making it so intense that you just cannot forget it is likely to carry on with us life after life and bring us together in a relationship of severe hatred. And in this particular instance, what we saw was that the hatred was one-sided. The other side, that is Bhagwan Parshvanath Ji, it was totally uh, a relationship of forgiveness, generosity, uh, and benevolent feelings towards the other person. And the exercise of hatred and the unfolding of that hatred into the means to start off a severe, violent ending of the other life carried on until the last life, when the final attempt did not actually succeed, as we saw last time. So, life 1, Marubhuti and Kamat. Life 2, Bhagwan Parshvanath Ji was born as an elephant, and we learned about how that uh, came about, even though Marubhuti was uh, a fairly enlightened soul. Towards the end, when he dies in severe pain after having been struck by a large stone on his head by Kamat, who was by that time tapas and who was very angry with Marubhuti when he came to ask his forgiveness for being responsible for the fact that he was banished from the kingdom by the king for his very bad behavior and his carrying on a relationship with Marubhuti's wife. Uh, and Kamat gets very angry, hits him with a stone, and he dies. And because of that pain and suffering and the lack of peace at the time of death, he is born as an elephant. And we saw what happened in that life. And in the third life, Bhagwan Parshvanath Ji becomes a Vaimanik Dev, but the snake that was Kamat's Jeev ends up in Narak in his third life. The fourth life, Bhagwan Parshvanath Ji was a Vidyadhar, a Kiran Veg, and the soul of Kamat was a large python, a snake. Fifth life, Bhagwan Parshvanath Ji continues in his elevated journey and is born in the 12th Devlok as Achyut Devlok with a long lifespan. Meanwhile, the soul of Kamat from the life as a snake goes to the 6th hell with a similar lifespan. In life 6, Bhagwan Parshvanath Ji is Vajranab, a king, and Kamat's soul is Kurangak, a cruel bill hunter, a human being, though, but again very cruel. In the 7th life, Bhagwan Parshvanath Ji is in the Garivayak Devlok, as a Lalitang Dev, and Kamat's Jeev is in the seventh hell. Life 8, Bhagwan Parshvanath Ji was a Chakravarti, Suvarna Bahu or Kanakarath, and Kamat's Ji was a lion in the eighth life. In life 8, Bhagwan Parshvanath Ji binds Tirthankar Nam Karma that would and that karma becomes nikachit, meaning it is then guaranteed to give him the fruit of that karma. It would not change. So in that life he binds the Tirthankar Nam karma. In life 9, Bhagavan Parshvanath Ji goes to 10th Devlok in Mahaprabhu Viman with a lifespan of 20 Sagrupam. Kamat's Ji goes to the 4th hell with a lifespan of 10 Sagrupam. And a lot of other lives are then spent in different species. Bhagavan Parshvanath, then those are not described, I think, here. In the 10th life, Tirthankar Bhagavan Parshvanath is born as Tirthankar Bhagavan Parshvanath. His soul is born in the womb of Vama Devi in the household of King Ashwasen. And this life of Kamat is born as a very poor person who, after some time and deep contemplation, decides to become a tapas, and he is known as Kamat again in this life, and he becomes a tapas. In that life, as we heard the story of what happens with their particular meeting when Bhagavan Parshvanath exposes the two snakes or one snake, according to a different version, in a log that Kamat has alighted as part of his Panchangani Tap. And Bhagavan Parshvanath saves the snake from the fire, but the snake is severely burned. He recites Naukar mantra to him, and the snake dies peacefully and is born as the Ranendra Dev, as we've seen later. Kamat Tapas dies in that life, and in the 11th life, he is born as Meghmali Dev. When we talk about lives, they are here for Kamat, we are talking about the major lives. With Bhagwan Parshvanath, there were no inferior lives apart from what is described here. In life 10, it's Bhagwan Parshvanath, but the final meeting for Kamat is in life 11, his life 11. Just a pictorial recap. The 14 dreams that Bhagwan Parshvanath's mother sees. We all know about these dreams. Sorry, Bijal, you raised your hand. You can ask.
Pranam, Ajitbhai.
Pranam, yeah.
Do we know where Kamat's Jeev is now?
Not in the detail that I've read, but we know from this narrative that Kamat, in that life as Meghmali Dev, after he has unleashed this severe rain which nearly drowns Bhagwan Parshvanath, and Dharanendra and Padmavati come to save him, and that final scene that we learned about. And when Dharanendra realizes who is doing this, and he uh, threatens him very severely and says, "You better stop this right now, otherwise I'm going to have to punish you." and you will not be able to escape from me anywhere. And obviously, Dharanendra was a much more powerful Dev, and Meghmali thinks that if Bhagwan Parshvanath, who is all forgiving, that I've been sort of punishing with all these atrocities that I've been committing, will not hold any grudge and will not punish me, though he has the power to crush me because the Tirthankar's strength is massive. He says that uh, but I will not escape Dharanendra, and he immediately withdraws all his other um reign that he had uh, sort of fallen with the power that he had as a Dev, Meghmali Dev. He changes the scene completely and he goes to Bhagwan Parshvanath because he says that only if I seek his forgiveness will Dharanendra let me free. Otherwise, I'm going to face a huge amount of punishment from Dharanendra. So he goes to him, asks for forgiveness, realizes what wrong he has done according to this narrative. And I'll read the words that are described here. And this is my understanding that he is repentant. And I would expect that when he begins repentance, his spiritual progress starts. So, where exactly he is something that is not described here, but there may be other texts where it is described.
Thank you.
Okay. So, this is a slide about Bhagwan Parshvanath's pictorial side about Chavan, and the similar slides depict the Chavan Kalyana, that is when at the point of conception, when all Tirthankar Paramatma's mothers see these 14 dreams. The sequence of the dreams may vary slightly, but these 14 dreams are also seen by the mothers of all the Chakravartis as well. But there is a slight difference from what I have read or heard, is that the kinds of dreams that, even though they are the same in terms of the number and the type, there is some difference between the dreams that are seen by the mothers of Chakravartis as opposed to the mothers of Tirthankars. And again, this is a universal rule. Every Tirthankar, anywhere, anytime, uh, his Chavan um, comes with this particular set of dreams. Then we saw in the narrative how Bhagwan Parshvanath grows up and at a certain age gets married to Prabhavati, Princess Prabhavati, and we heard about the narrative about how that comes about. And then this is the story of Kamat Tapas and Bhagwan Parshvanath. Uh, Here they're depicting two snakes as one of the versions, uh, and there is some difference in the different versions there. Then in the year before Diksha, we see here that, like all Tirthankars, Bhagwan Parshvanath, at the request of the Lokantik Dev, even though it is part of their normal duties, the Lokantik Dev would come and remind the future Tirthankar that the time has come for them to establish a Tirth. And that happens about a year before. And from that day onwards, the Tirthankar Paramatma starts what is called Varshidan. So for the whole year is engaged in giving uh, all kinds of wealth to anybody who comes, and it goes on from early morning till uh, evening on a daily basis, and a huge amount of wealth is distributed, and this wealth is brought to the Tirthankar Paramatma, so from their kingdom, but also a lot of other wealth that the Devs know about that have been buried around all over the world, because the amount of wealth from times immemorial that are lying around would be immeasurable, and the Devs seek some, bring it along. And there are narratives about the recipients of this wealth and how, having received this kind of dan from Tirthankar Paramatma, their lives also change. Then I found a picture about this that we shared last week about that particular uh, upsarg that Bhagwan Parshvanath suffered from at the hands of Megh Mali, and that is that illustration. So torrential rain that we cannot even imagine, that would uh, completely engulf Bhagwan Parshvanath up to the level of his nostrils. That is what had happened. And at that stage, Taranendra and Padmavati come to help Bhagwan Parshvanath, and this is how they did that. So an umbrella made of the fana, or the different hoods of a serpent on the head to protect the rain from falling further, and a kamal that elevated Bhagwan Parshvanath's body right out of the water. And then we talked about Bhagwan Parshvanath's Keval Gnan, and I think we probably had started these slides, but we hadn't gone into the depth of this. What is Keval Gnan? What are the steps of the soul's progress? And what in Tarak? A brief overview. That was my intention, but I think that may take too long. But very briefly, Keval Gnan is exposed at the point of, so Keval Gnan is the virtue of the soul. It is basically a quality of the soul which becomes radiant when the soul, the karmas, the four ghati karmas that are attached to the soul, are completely destroyed. And when those four ghati karmas are destroyed, the soul's natural state of Keval Gnan, Keval Darshan, Sampurna Charitra, all those things become apparent, and that is uh, that state from which there is no going back. And then the final stage of development is when the soul discards, escapes from the body, and goes straight up from whatever position they are, straight up to Siddhshila, to the end of Lokakash, and stops there on Siddhshila, which we know as moksha. Just very quickly about the progress of the soul. It is described in 14 different stages, though there are probably infinite number of steps in between, but the four major steps are described. We won't go into the details, but very briefly, the first stage is mithyatva, and even at that stage, it gets the title of gunsthan. Gunsthan meaning a step of virtue. A sthan means a step, or a particular stop. And even though it is mithyatva, there is some degree of understanding and development that starts at that stage. And then there is the second, third stage. We won't go into the details of what is the second and what is the third at this stage. But then once we reach the fourth stage, that is the avirat samyak drashti gunsthan, meaning that you attain the level of initial enlightenment when the recognition of your true self as the soul and separate from the body and separate from all that is non-life and all the relationships. So it is not just an intellectual understanding of that separateness of the soul and the body, it is the internal awareness of that particular duality, that I am the soul who is currently occupying this body, that this is what I am. Everything else that I see around me and that I live through is as a result of the karmas that I've acquired in my previous lives. But I am not that. I am not my body. I am not my profession. I am not my relationships. I am not my all the other things that we attach ourselves to. And accepting and understanding and recognizing that duality, the two separate things, is in absolute terms probably that first step of what is called samyaktva. And achieving that particular step, the real progress of the soul starts. But even before we reach that stage, the state at which a level of understanding starts, there is a term called Charamavartakal. Charamavartakal is when the soul is in the final round of the cycle of birth and death. And the Charam Avart. So when the cycle of birth and death is described and the duration of the last cycle, even the last cycle is probably is an infinite number of years. So it could be billions and billions of lifetimes, but that is still, compared with the past, is still limited. So when the soul enters that charama vartakal, some level of development spiritually starts. And there are sort of 8 stages. Uh, some of the early stages that are described in Patanjali Yoga with different names, but those are related to what the Jain scriptures describes as Yogni Ath Drasti, so the 8 drastis of yoga, and those describe the initial stages of development before the soul reaches Samyaktva. And once it reaches Samyaktva, then the future towards moksha is limited to a maximum of a time span which is described as Ardh Pudgal Paravartan Kal. Ardh means half. Pudgal Paravartan is a huge amount of time. We won't go into the details. I would have to produce, read and give you the details of what Achar Pudgal Paravartan Kal is, but it is, it doesn't, you can't put it in a number. You can't put it in Chuvises either. So you can't put it in Kal Chakras because it is a huge amount of time, even the half of the Pudgal Paravartan Kal. But the soul's progress from the Charamavartakal time towards the achievement of Samyaktva, and from the achievement of Samyaktva, the progress to moksha can be extremely short as well. So from the time of enlightenment and from the birth of enlightenment, in the same life, the soul may be able to achieve moksha in that particular life, going through the other 14, other 10 stages. So fifth gunsthan or the fifth step is called Desvirat Samyak Drasti, meaning there is a limited level of spiritual practice in terms of charitra, means Desvirti, means the person or the soul is withdrawing in a limited way from sansaric life. So the 12 vows of a Shravak is that fifth stage, and the sixth stage is uh, the life of elevated sadhu, the fifth and the sixth stage. Sorry, I think I'm mixing things up. Yeah, I think fourth is Avirat Samyak Drasti, fifth is Desvirat Samyak Drasti. Bharat Bhai, are you on the class today?
Yes, Jai Janendra.
Am I right?
Yeah, the fifth is Deshvirti.
Desvirti, and sixth
The
is
sixth is Monkhood,
yeah,
Pramatsayanti,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and
Okay,
then Apramatsayanti.
opposite, yeah. So sixth is when you take some vows as a monk, and then the progress slowly starts upwards. But there are different sort of directions in which the progress may go on. One is when you are progressing, you can progress quite far up with uh, suppressing your karmas, but not completely destroying them. And then there is a path by which the karmas are destroyed, and that path is more sort of guaranteed in terms of progress. But the other path, there is a chance that you may fall down as well. So these different paths go on to and describe the progress of the soul, and that very briefly is the 14 gunsthans, the 14 steps. At some stage in the future, if you're interested, we can talk about that. Okay. Bhagwan Parshvanath's life, Chavan to Nirvana. Here are the tithis that are on which those particular auspicious events, the five auspicious events in every Tirthankar's life happens. Chavan Kalyanak for Bhagwan Parshvanath was on Chaitra Vad Chot, Janma Kalyanak on Posh Vad Chot. The scriptures actually described the Tithi as well as the Nakshatra. Nakshatra is the position of the stars at that particular time. Janma is birth, Chavan is conception. So Chavan Chaitra Vad 4th, Janma Posh Vad Dasam, Diksha Posh Vad Agyaras at the age of 30. Keval Gnan on the 84th day after he had taken Diksha on Chaitra Vad 4th. And at the time of Keval Gnan, as we've heard before, when the Keval Gnan happens, the Indras and all the Devs come to celebrate that and uh, create a Samvasran, which is a sort of a three-staged uh, stadium stage. I think one could describe it as a stadium uh, which has got three levels. The ground level is where all the uh, vehicles of the people and the devs are parked. The second level is where animals from all around come and sit side by side to listen to Bhagwan's Deshna. And the final, the top uh, stage is where all the human beings, devs and devis, would sit, and they are sort of divided into 12 parshadas, so sort of 12 different uh, assemblies or gathering that are around the Tirthankar Paramatma, who sits on one side, and the devs would create an image or a murti on the other three sides So it's always four-sided, and everybody is sitting around, and everybody who's sitting there would hear it as if they are sitting right in front of the Tirthankar Paramatma, because the other uh, images or murtis are exactly like the Tirthankar Paramatma. And there is an Ashok Vruksh at the middle of this, and there are all these other different pratiharyas that are part of Tirthankar Paramatma's Aishcharya that one would see during this time. Bhagwan Parshvanath on that first day initiated 10 Gandharas, one of whom was Aryadat. So that name comes up in Trisasya Purush Charitra. The names of the others are not. I presume that Aryadat was probably the lead Gandhar, but those words are not necessarily used here. And as we have heard before in Bhagwan Parshvanath, in Bhagwan Mahavir's life story, that the Gandhars uh, ask the fundamental questions. Bante kim tattam? What is the truth, or what is the uh, of the universe of ourselves? And Bhagwan, in answer to that question, says Upaneiva, Vigamveiva, Duveiva, and based on those three statements, the Ganadhars with their what is called their Bij Buddhi, meaning their superb intellect, are able to create the whole total body of knowledge, and that is Dwadasangi or 12 angs. So the Gandhars, the 10 Gandhars created that. Bhagwan Parshvanath then starts his narrative on that first day in the Samvatsaran. So he begins his Deshana, and Hemchandracharya in Trisasya Shalaka Purush Charitra with every Tirthankar is covering a different topic. But with Bhagwan Parshvanath, what he is describing here is that the subject matter of his first sermon, which starts with the description of Shravak Dharma and Yati Dharma, and then details about the Shravak Dharma. So Trisasya Purush Charitra in a couple of pages summarizes all the 12 vows of a householder, that is a Shravak, people like us, what the 12 vows are, what are the limitations of those 12 vows, of the first 5 vows as opposed to the great vows of a monk, and as opposed to in that time, Bhagwan Parshvanath's time, the vows of the monk were 4, not 5. And I think at some stage in Bhagwan Mahavir's life story, we have learned about that. But Bhagwan Parshvanath describes the 12 vows, and all the people who had come there listened to it. At the end of that sermon, King Aswasen, Bhagwan Parshvanath's father, was also there. He heard the sermon, and he crowned his youngest son Hastisen as the king and took Diksha uh, under Bhagwan Parshvanath. Prabhavati also took Diksha at that time. That is what's given here. And the details are not here, but it is possible that many other people took Diksha on that first day. Obviously, the 10 Ganadhars, but they themselves may have had others following them as well. Some of the things that are commonly described for every Tirthankar Paramatma, so all 24 would have a different Sasana Dev. So in Bhagwan Parshvanath's Tirth, the Sasana Dev was a yaksh called Parshva. The description of what that yaksh looked like is also given here, and what are the sort of basic how those yakshas are depicted and what they were initially. So that description is there. I won't go into the details because there is a narrative about that. and the Sasan Devi, meaning Sasan means the Tirth, Sasan means the whole organization under which the road to moksha is described for people to follow, and that whole organization is called a Sasan, and that Sasan or the Tirth has an Adhistayaka Dev and a Devi who look after the welfare and protect the Tirth and help the people who are on that path. So the Sasan Devi is Devi Padmavati, who was a Yakshini, and as we know, the Devs and Devis have a long lifespan, and the Sasan Devs and the Sasan Devis of Bhagwan Parshvanath would still be quite active. So Devi Padmavati is worshipped everywhere, and in the temples of Bhagwan Parshvanath and even elsewhere, the uh, statue or the murti of Devi Padmavati is almost always depicted. So in all our derasas, Devi Padmavati has a prominent position on the side of the Dev. I'll come to you, Bijal, in a minute. Bhagwan Parshvanath's Sangh had 16,000 sadhus. So at the time of his uh, what's described is that he had 16,000 sadhus, 38,000 sadhuis, 350 14 purvadars. So those who had the knowledge of 14 purvas, there were 350 of them, 1400 with Audignan, 750 with Manparyavgnan, 1000 with Kevalgnan, 11,000 with Vaikriya Labdhi. A Labdhi is a special power. Vaikriya Labdhi, Vaikriya is the power to be able to change your body and take up any form. It's like the kind of power that Devs have, that they can take up any form that they like. A monk with that particular Labdhi or that particular power would also have a similar ability. 600 add what is called Vad Labdhi. Vad Labdhi means that you are so endowed with the skill of debate that nobody could actually win you in a debate. So 600 such munis existed in Bhagwan Parshvanath's Sangh. There were 1,64,000, that is 164,000 Shravaks, and 3,77,000 Shravikas, means female household followers of Jain Dharma, and 164,000 Shravaks means male followers of Jain Dharma householders. Bhagwan Parshvanath progressed to moksha at the age of 100 on Shravan Sud Atham from Samet Sikhar with 33 other munis, and they all took ansan, meaning they, knowing that the time for the end of life is near, they would stop eating and drinking and take ansan until death comes. It's not described in Trisasti Shalaka as to how many days before the actual nirvana did they start the ansan. So that is not described here. But Bhagwan Parshvanath went to moksha from Samet Sikhar. And there is a particular Parshvanath Tunk in Samet Sikhar. And he went to moksha with 33 other munis on that day. Bijal, your question, I'll stop sharing the slides now.
I was just going to make a comment that Parshva Yaksha is generally not in most derasas, but they have that in Colindale. If anyone hasn't been, it's really nice. And they've even got Osya Devi, which you don't see very many places.
Yeah. So whose question is this? Do all souls... Sorry, let me open up. Do all souls who reach moksha also gain Keval Gnan beforehand, or just the Tirthankars do, or only some souls do? Sorry, who is asking this question?
The name is just T on
Yeah.
Krishna.
Hello, Krishna. You see, the development of the soul, one cannot go to moksha until one gets rid of all the karmas. One cannot, having got rid of the karmas, all the natural qualities of the soul would become exposed and apparent, because all the karmas are hiding the natural qualities of the soul. So in its completely pure form, the soul's basic qualities are all exposed. So the basic quality, Keval Gnan, is a fundamental quality of the soul. So every soul, without achieving Keval Gnan, so as soon as the four Kati karmas are destroyed, Keval Gnan develops, whether the soul is a Tirthankar, that of a Tirthankar or not, or is an ordinary Kevali. So the term that is used is Samanya Kevali, meaning not a Tirthankar, but an ordinary Kevali. So when what is described here is that Bhagwan Parshvanath's Sangh had 1000 Keval Gnanis. So they were all Samanya Kevalis whose life in that particular body had not yet come to an end. So they exist as Keval Gnanis until the time to go to moksha, or the time for them to leave their body, or the time of their nirvana doesn't come. They would carry on. And a lot of Kevalis, when they are around, in the absence of a Tirthankar or even in the presence of a Tirthankar, would be in different places giving sermons to different people. But the creation of a samvatsarana is unique to a Tirthankar. So not ordinary Kevali Bhagwans do not have devs and devis attending them all the time. Devs and devis may come to celebrate their attainment of Keval Gnan, and there are lots of stories about at that moment when devs realize that somebody has achieved Keval Gnan, they would play a celestial instrument like a flute, a large flute or a trumpet, which is called dundubi. So there are sort of descriptions of that. But Keval Gnan is the natural quality of the soul, and all those 8 qualities of a Siddh Bhagwant that are described are apparent at the end of, at the time that the soul is in moksha. They're all there. So, I mean, Trishna, what was your understanding that Keval Gnan is something that is achieved from outside? Because that is a fundamental quality. Was there your understanding that it is something that is bestowed on the soul?
Hi, Jai Jinendra, Ajitbhai. So my understanding was that Kavagnan is achieved before moksha, but I just wasn't sure whether all souls achieve Kavagnan or whether it was just the Tirthankars who achieved Kavagnan. But you've made it clear that in all, Kavagnan is basically, as you said, of the soul, where all the karmas have been removed. So technically, anyone who attains moksha should be achieving Kavagnan, right?
Would have achieved Keval Gnan, and that they may have a lifespan after achieving Keval Gnan before they go to moksha. They may not have a lifespan, so they may, at the moment of achieving Keval Gnan, their life span ends at that moment, and they may go straight to moksha after achieving Keval Gnan within a short while. Or, so it depends. I mean, there are depictions of a lot of Kevali Bhagwans who achieved Keval Gnan and immediately or soon after went to moksha. Some would stay around for a long time afterwards as well. Yeah.
Would they ever have to take another life after Keval Gnan?
Again, what is your understanding? So if you have achieved your absolute state of purity,
Yeah.
you would not be acquiring any new karmas that would actually take you again into a life, from that particular life to another life. Because at that stage of full development, when the ghati karmas have gone, your future lives have ended, basically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because you would not form any Ayusha karma to take you to any other life. So
Okay.
again, once you achieve Keval Gnan, your moksha is guaranteed in that particular life.
Life.
There,
Okay.
there is no other, so there wouldn't be any point if you have been purified to that level, and then the soul acquires further karmas.
Yeah.
That would give them another birth. That would be completely against the principles of nature, of how the soul and its association with karma works.
Okay. Understood. Yeah.
Yeah.
All clear. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Is Hamel from Leicester here? No, probably not. Okay. So can I ask for some feedback from those of you who are here, and maybe in this last class, could I see some of you? If you feel up to it, maybe you can switch on your videos. Thank you, Ashwinbhai, Sheilaben, Bharatbhai. Bijal, good. Okay. Rita Ben, Savita. No. Okay. Any questions? You can unmute yourself, or you can put the question on the chat. No questions? Can I ask you all to tell me whether you found this particular Tirthankar Paramatma's life story useful and interesting or not? And in comparison with the story of Bhagwan Mahavir that many of you may have heard or attended those classes, anything different that you want to reflect on? Any comments? Found it very interesting, Krishna. Yes, but do you or does somebody have any reflections on what the differences are between Bhagwan Parshvanath's life and Bhagwan Mahavir's life? So every Tirthankar Paramatma's journey is different in that sense, but the narrative describes their associations. Any particular reflections on this? You see, one of the things that I reflect on in Bhagwan Mahavir's life, I don't know if many of you may remember two incidents during his life as Triprushta Vasudev. The musician who was punished because he kept on playing, after the Triprushta Vasudev had gone to sleep, he forgot the particular instruction or order that as soon as I'm asleep, you must stop your music, and he carried on playing. And that woke up the Vasudeva, the king, and he punished the musician by pouring molten lead. And that particular severe karma that was acquired came to fruition in the life as Bhagwan Mahavir, and the soul of that musician, born as a cowherd, ended up not knowing why, but ended up with a lot of anger and hammered in nails in both Bhagwan Mahavir's ears, as we know. This was the first time that that severely acquired karma unfolded without his knowledge, and that dislike about that person who was probably responsible for pain that he had suffered in a previous life, was responsible for that, was not necessarily brimming full of hatred. And it was an incident that unfolded, and when the two souls came together, that sudden dislike sort of zoomed up, and similar things happened in the others. But the intensity of that hatred that we see depicted in this association between Bhagwan Parshvanath and Kamat is much greater. And worse than this, those of you who have heard the story of Samaraditya Kevli, and in the first life Gunsen and Agni Sarma, would recognize that as well. So then there is the other story of the lion who was killed by Triprushta Vasudev, who was born as a farmer in the time when after Bhagwan Mahavir had achieved Kevagnan, and that farmer is taught, is sort of enlightened by Guru Gautam Gardhar, who was sent by Bhagwan Mahavir to go and talk with this farmer. And this farmer actually comes along to become a monk. But as soon as he sees Bhagwan Mahavir, he decides that if he's the person who is going to lead me, then I don't want to be a monk. And that was because he develops a sudden dislike for this person who he had not known in this life at all, but that suffering that he had as a result of him being killed by the Vasudev. So he didn't want to be part of that Sangh, but he was happy enough to accompany Guru Gautam, and was convinced by Guru Gautam that for his own soul's welfare, the best path was to become a monk. And the story of why that happened, because Guru Gautam was kind to that particular lion in that particular life, and that kindness was something that the sanskar of that kindness were retained in this person's soul. So some of those differences teaches me that the intensity of your emotions is something that will carry on troubling you if you don't sort of guard against those. So those are some lessons. Somebody, Sandeep, yeah, go on.
Two things. I mean, you just mentioned about these two incidents that happened in Bhagwan Mahavir's life. No, well, his soul, but obviously in his third life as Marich, because he thought about that's another thing as well, and that's where he started. That's one thing. To your question, I mean, I just wanted to know. I mean, Bhagwan Mahavir had ups and downs because of these three or more occasions. It seems that Bhagwan Parshvanath, his 10 lives were mostly ascending, like, very good and so on. So do we know why in his last life, as as you mentioned just a few minutes ago, he had this upsurge? I mean, do we know why he had to suffer that with is it Meg?
Yeah, Megmali Dev, the Kamat's Jeev.
Yes.
So,
Do we know why?
well, very good question. That Megmali was obviously remembering his past lives and his association as a Dev. He had the knowledge of his past life, at least the previous one. I'm not sure. The narrative says that he remembered the association and his hatred resurfaced. So he set out to punish Bhagwan Parshvanath as severely as he could. Bhagwan Parshvanath was completely detached at that moment. Even though his body was suffering and there were frightening things happening around him, he was not necessarily suffering himself, in the sense that he was completely detached and he was not afraid. He was not, I mean, he may have been in pain. So similarly, when we look at Bhagwan Mahavir's life, the fact that his body was feeling the pain, but in fact his internal uh, state was that of complete uh, peace, stability, with no evidence of any kind of distress, painful distress. So even in the worst kind of upsurges, even though the body was being plummeted by all kinds of problems, so the karmas were unfolding. So here your question is, what was that karma of Bhagwan Parshvanath?
Yes, because otherwise,
Yeah.
without him suffering a karma, something done before, without him doing that karma before, he wouldn't have suffered that, whether he felt it or not. That's my understanding.
Yeah. So exactly what karma or what it's difficult to know. There's no description from at least from the Trisasishalaka Purush Charitra. Some other Sadhu Bhagwans may have an explanation for that, and the roots of that particular experience may lie in some previous life somewhere. But the way we acquire karmas and different things that we do may not necessarily be very specific, but there may be sort of minor accumulations of unguarded moments when we have acquired all kinds of little uh, episodes of irritation, of harming other people, of not being careful with the welfare of other lives, being cruel, being unkind, using, and not necessarily physically, but using words that hurt people. So all kinds of things that we do on a daily basis continuously attracts karmas according to what is going on within ourselves. So in terms of how different karmas are bound. So at every moment we are binding all the 7 karmas except Ayusha karma, the 8th one. The Ayusha karma is not bound all the time, but all the other 7 karmas are bound, and how they will come into fruition can vary, and it will not necessarily be as a result of your association with the agent of that karma unfolding. So Kamat was the agent. So Bhagwan Parshvanath's particular karma, my understanding is, may not necessarily have been in association with Kamat. Could have been
Yes,
anything in any other life.
or it could have been prior to the 10 lives.
It could be, yes, it could be.
With
Possible.
karma.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it could be.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Okay.
Sorry, Ajitbhai, someone's just put in a question. So we'll just take this last one.
Yeah.
Why are there more Jinale than the other Tirthankars?
Because the explanation that I've heard is that the Adhisthayaka Devs of Parshvanath Bhagwan are all very active, and their influence in terms of helping people in need is fairly well felt. So there are lots of chamatkars associated with some auspicious temples like Sankeshwar Parshvanath and other Parshvanath Bhagwan temples. So the Devs and Devis are more alert in helping people. So that is one reason. And the other reason is that Parshvanath Bhagwan is well known, partly because during his last life before the birth as Bhagwan Parshvanath, as a Dev, he spent he attended a large number of Kalyanaks of Tirthankar Paramatmas during that long life that he had as a Dev. There could have been many different Tirthankars born in different lands. So the other 4 Bharat Kshetras, the Airavat Kshetras, and he attended, I mean, it's possible that he attended the Kalyanaks of even some of our Tirthankars in this Bharat Kshetra, and the punya that he had accumulated ensured that he was he had acquired that particular punya that is still unfolding, so that effect is still existent, even though the soul has left. That power that he had and the power of his virtue basically is still very prominent. That is the explanation that I've heard. Okay. There are other information here about Bhagwan Parshvanath's Tirth, but we won't go into the details. And there is this particular story that I wanted to tell you, but I think it's quite late now. It's 9:30. That from the time that Bhagwan Parshvanath achieved Kevalgnan, there is one particular story that is described in Sri Shalaka of his Charitra about one just very quickly, 1 second. There is a description of the 70 years almost that he spent after achieving Kevalgnan. there's a story about Sagar Dutt and his previous life. So it's quite an interesting story, and it is described here as part of the narrative of that time between Bhagwan Parshvanath's Kevalgnan and his Nirvana. So at some stage we can listen to that. It's a very interesting story. So that's it. Kavit has written, please send us any feedback. The topic for the next course is something that Sandeepa and I will discuss. But I hope you enjoyed the break and the other lessons that you learned about recently. Okay. Thank you. If I've said anything that is against the teachings of the Tirthankar Paramatmas and Guru Bhagwans and the scriptures, I ask for forgiveness. Jinagna Virudh Kaipan Bolyo, Te Sami Manamchan Kaya Kari, Tasmichami Dukram, Suramangal Mangalyam, Surakalyan Karanam, Pradhanam Suradharmanam, Janam Jeti Sasanam. Thank you. Bye.